Good afternoon. Happy Tuesday. Thanks again for tuning in to Bite-sized Bhagavad Gita with Sadhu for sadhuarts.tv, and for the benefit of all living beings walking upon this earth, and for those who are currently transmigrating. We are making our way through the Bhagavad Gita and have arrived at Chapter 2, the contents of the Bhagavad Gita Summarised. Last week we looked at the armies being observed in Chapter 1 by Arjuna, right at the moment when he decided to call it quits and pretty much broke down on the battlefield before Lord Krishna, in his strength, magic and determination, just somehow gave a whistle, and eventually Arjuna surrenders to Krishna at that historic moment on the battlefield of Kurukreshta. So now, this is the point where Krishna, for those who know the Bhagavad Gita, loudly, boldly announced, "Get up and fight, Arjuna." And in fact, the whole Bhagavad Gita is pretty much condensed into this particular chapter, which I think is probably occurring for practical reasons in the face of the time and place, to not forget that it is a book. Let's consider that there's a whole war about to take place, and to sing a whole Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna with them arrows launched and everything ready to be rocketed, this is probably a good idea on Krishna's behalf, just to have summarized everything real quick, like that. So here we are, the Bhagavad Gita. It's pretty much a time in Chapter 2 where Krishna really sharpens the arrow of Arjuna's determination and spiritual vision, and does this with strong intention. You see the armies that were observed on either side of the battlefield, then Krishna kind of, in his majesty as Govinda, the herder of cows, he brings what Arjuna's delusions, how they are manifesting, right to him there and there, as an impetus to fight, as an impetus to destroy his illusion. And he makes the sharp distinction by determining the difference between the material and the spiritual, eternal kingdom, as it were. Because there are two kingdoms fighting here, don't forget that. Okay, so how does Krishna do this? For Arjuna, he basically points out all the flaws that are holding the material conception of life in Arjuna's mind. His grace, he does this, as a servitor, he who serves rules. Really, Krishna was there driving Arjuna onto the battlefield, and he explains the delusion that Arjuna is facing very simply. You're associating these characters as eternal, and you're not recognizing me, the eternality within these characters, within your friends and family. And not only does he do that, like what type of teacher would just point out things, like teachers do that, they just point out, this is wrong, this is bad, this is good, whatever. But Krishna then continues with explaining how one can come out of this trap and develop wisdom for oneself. This is possible by the process of karma yoga, jnana yoga, and bhakti yoga. Chapter 3, 4, and 5 respectively. So with Arjuna not willing to fight, not willing to destroy what is apparently eternal to him, the reflection of a higher vision is necessary that could only be produced by Krishna to show that what you'll be killing is actually a material substance anyway that will fade away. In other words, you may recognize this as the psychological clinging to other personalities to remember one's own personality. I mean, it's like dominoes in this fractal nature of understanding things. One thing builds upon the other, and then eventually the whole web of illusion is created. And so Krishna then says, this is a game of dying. This is the path of the warrior, And these are the different ways you can do it. You can work yourself to death, you can study yourself to death, or you can love yourself to death. This is bite-sized Bhagavad Gita, of course. There's a very extensive yogic techniques that I've just summarized, but basically in each one of these yogic paths there is the possibility of just losing oneself into the supreme nature of the universe. And Krishna backs up this point by saying, never was there a time when I didn't exist, nor you, nor all these kings. We just keep coming back time and time again. So get up and fight. What are you worried about? In the fighting process, you will lose yourself. You will lose yourself in the drive of what you love doing so much that even if you did win the battle, you've already won because you're above that. You got to recognize that you're above that, and Krishna moves things in your way on purpose. And if you can take that step back and that breath and how long it takes for you to reach the heart, you then can see how this was all moving for the sake of your understanding, for the sake of your higher aspiration, for that Krishna consciousness. And Arjuna means one who attains his goal. Arjuna in particular had the opportunity for Krishna to really lodge himself into place. And he lodged himself into place by doing this, by appealing to him on the personality level as well, saying that if you don't fight, you're going to look like a wuss. And if you do fight, you might win a kingdom, And so every level, Krishna's already there because he's already here. Every level is understood. Arjuna has understood this, that it could be going at that path, going at this path, to recognize the fundamental Krishna nature. It ain't just everything, That's why the jnana is exposed as well. Jnana is spoken of as in don't worry about the flowery language of the Vedas because I am beyond the Vedas. So Krishna wasn't exactly Kalki in the manifestations of Vishnu avatars. Kalki is the one who kind of cleans up everything at the end of the yugas. Krishna does this, as he says, I come back time and time again to reinstate the Dharma where there is moral decadence. But he was really just pushing everything to that threshold, to that level of this is where we can go, this is how we can maintain love and transcend material worldly attachments. Either way, the jnana yoga process is good. And so the last trap that is made by Arjuna and many people on the path is that morality, I can't kill people for morality. Arjuna said this, that there would be a moral decadence were the kingdom to fall, and where would one turn to if there was no teachers, if there were no moral imperatives to be attracted toward? But you see, this is why it's such a fundamental teaching. This is why a religion was born out of this exercise, this yoga. Is a striving for union within the source, the essence of morality itself. So the family quarrels, it's all good because there is a potential for deep morality to spring from this. It sort of is the first and last religious war in a way. It's the last religious war. Obviously, it's the first religious war on the material plane, but it's the last religious war that anyone could ever fight, because once you're aligned with that higher spiritual wisdom and you've done the yoga and you've taken shelter under the Supreme Being with Krishna as a direction, the war is only the facing the battles of not having that faith, of deceiving oneself that there is some kind of outside goal, which there is. But it's only going to be a pushing back further into the deepening of wisdom. And so the moral point to be made is not that all outside world is somehow integrally antagonistic to the spiritual path, but the fact that Krishna has made so many, the teachers are there on one side of the battlefield, and the friends and family, that they're all there, showing that there's always ways to move back in, even collectively, as he expounds the Sangha, even collectively, as to kill one's teacher means to build upon what is already lacking. And so he put forth again this momentum of ever expanding knowledge and wisdom, and kind of also expounds about the Vedic Shastra system, which might not be too relevant today, but that all of us are on that path if we consider ourselves warriors of the spiritual order. That's 11 minutes. Thanks very much for tuning in. Didn't realize the camera has cut the top of my head off a little bit. There we go. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week for Chapter 3, Kama Yoga.